Here's your violin music for you.
Barracuda. I'd like to call to order the City Council Budget Workshop. Today is Tuesday, February 24th, 2026, and it's 5 o'clock p.m. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. Republic which it stands. With roll call.
Mayor Scott Nickel,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Adam Dyer,
Here.
Councilmember Susan Romy. Here. Councilmember David Nutt,
Here.
Councilmember Neil Yorio.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum. Also in attendance, City Manager Coffey.
Okay, thank you. We'll skip over item number 4 since we're all here. We'll go on to additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda, if any. Does anyone on council have any changes they want to see? None. We'll move along to reports. Item A, public comments, non-public hearing non-public hearing agenda items only. Sorry, it took me a while. Anybody from the public wish to speak about something that's a non-public hearing item? Please come up, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Seeing none. On to item 7, new business. Item 7A is fiscal year 27 budget priorities, fiscal year 27 to 31 capital improvement program priorities, and fiscal year 27 stormwater utility assessment rate discussion. City Manager Coffey.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, council members, residents here and watching at home. Tonight kicks off the public aspect of our fiscal year 27 budget preparation calendar. I do have a slide deck I will go through quickly. A few notes. Due to the interlocal agreement with Brevard County, if the city plans on increasing the stormwater utility assessment rate for next year, we have to notify them by March 1st. After this meeting, the next workshop will be April 28th, where you will review staff's proposed 5-year financial model and capital improvement plan. So we're going to go over real briefly revenues, expenditures, how I propose future assessment rates going, recap of your historic 5 areas emphasis, list of projects from last year's budget tentative for fiscal year 27, and then ask you for your priorities. As I mentioned, March 24th and April 28th are the next dates in the process. Revenue outlook. Last year we had about a 4% increase in valuations. Due to slowing growth in valuations, we're forecasting less than that. My gut says around 3% right now. Growth projections for all other revenue streams are very flat. If growing, they're growing at a 1 or 2%. Interest income will be lower next year due to finishing the expenditure of all the ARPA money. On the long-term approach, we all are aware of property tax reform debate in Tallahassee, but legislature is also considering eliminating business tax receipts, restricting building permit fees, and reducing our ability to collect paid parking fees. On the long term, last month, Florida DOJ issued a 99-page report, and a couple of the recommendations was limiting fund balance to 10%, and that Florida should provide local government services more efficiently through abolition or consolidation with particular interest paid to small cities and highly urban counties. That basically is a big zero on our back, in my opinion. Stormwater fund, in my opinion, we need to continue phased increases in the rate. Long-term expenditure needs greatly exceed our current revenue stream. That's based on grant or state appropriation funding offsetting. Usually state appropriations is 50% minimum local match, although there are sometimes grant funding that you can get more than 50%. On the expenditure side, fiscal year 27 will reach the last dollar an hour increase in the minimum wage, which will further compress the lower end of our pay scale. This also we anticipate, due to our tightness in our budget, a declining competitiveness with other employers, because some of our neighboring municipalities have committed to, at least their public safety, very generous increases over the next several years. We have large cost items on the horizon, such as finishing the fire annex project, the ladder replacement truck, muck removal, stormwater projects, and the very strong likelihood that the annual growth in costs will exceed our growth in revenues. On the long term, from my analysis of past years, we need approximately 5 to 6% growth in property tax receipts to cover a minimum of 3% annual employee increases, health insurance, and insurance increases. As I said earlier, I don't think we're going to be anywhere close to that. Larger cities and private sector employers will not have these restraints. Therefore, we have to realize that we are going to degrade our competitiveness in the local job market for certain positions. On the stormwater utility, at this point, I am not recommending an increase for fiscal year 27. I think we are at a position where we could look to do increases every other year, and that's what this chart represents. That is purely a preference. Doing it every other year gets into a $30 a year increase versus a $12 or $18 a year increase. Areas of emphasis, the first one is safe and secure communities. This is public safety that I believe our prior budgets and our current budget well address. Quality of life, the muck removal project is at the top of that. As we heard recently, we've got a short time frame and a lot of uncertainty in that. And other aspects of quality of life is our physical environment that Public Works takes care of, and the recreation, community events, communications with residents. Financial sustainability. We propose continuing being a debt-free city. Ideally, we'd like to diversify our revenue streams as much as possible. Property tax receipts account for 64% of our general fund budget, and minimizing increases in stormwater fund as much as possible. I propose that this coming budget year, staff is going to give a thorough re-examination of our fleet and the type of vehicles each department has to ensure that we are having the fleet that we need and not necessarily the fleet that we want. We all around this table want to do the best job possible, but as we reach into tightening budgets, I believe our fleet is one area where we potentially can find some savings. Continued investment in technology to safeguard us from cyber attacks. City of Cocoa is in a position right now that no one wants to be in. And we appreciate Dominic and Tristan for what they do to safeguard our data and our city, and continued aggressive pursuits of grants and appropriations. Improve and maintain infrastructure. This is where a big bulk of our budget for next year is currently projected. Year 2 of the fire station annex. The state appropriation request is still being considered. The budget has not been adopted, and if it makes the budget, the governor can always line item veto it. So we got a ways to go before we can rest assured we have some offsetting there. Year 2 of setting money aside for the ladder replacement truck. And the other thing that is not pleasant, but we may need to defer some more capital replacement projects to balance operating budgets, although this has a short-term benefit, but it causes longer-term problems. Use of technology. Dominic continues to virtualize our operating system to save money and increase cybersecurity. We are planning to work to start populating other layers of our GIS system to better plan future capital expenditures, and wisely expand the use of AI to streamline processes, increase productivity, and residents' ease of obtaining information. We are currently recruiting a communications manager. That person will be tasked with developing a communications engagement plan for your review later this year. My concept of that is documenting our current capacities and providing cost-effective expansion options going forward, and better communications internally and externally, I believe, is critical if we are forced to reduce services going forward. Uncertainty is a virus that is very deadly in local government, both from a public and an employee perspective. This list is taken from the fiscal year 26 budget for the 27 column with the finger canals added. You can see we have some very high-priced projects to begin with. This number adds up quickly to approximately $6 million. Stormwater projects, big muddy seawall replacement, continuing pipe repairs, starting the T-beam and slip lining of pipes, and year 2 of school road drainage repairs. That project cost is yet to be determined, so that's a placeholder that's probably low. Current recap, without the fire annex and assuming probably less than ideal funding from the county for the muck removal project, meaning not 100%. We're currently at about a $2.5 million deficit for next year. It says 2.6, but been working on it. Shaved a little of it off. With the fire annex appropriations approved as requested, that's 1.5. If the county kicks in full funding for the muck removal project, that number gets down closer to $1 million or less than $1 million. It's still going to require some difficult choices. That number is also based on bringing down the employee raises from 4% to a working number of 2.5%. So I've gone through and picked up not the low-hanging fruit, but the fruit off the ground to try to reduce that number. Stormwater, We project a balanced budget with a slight surplus. There is some uncertainty on the actual final reimbursement for the City Hall baffle box project. And so that concludes my report. I always put two things on the last slide. Mike Conduff, a mentor of mine from years ago, said staff deals with how things get done. Elected officials deal with what gets done. I believe that's a very apropos statement to end my presentation with. And lastly, I put my little blue tick coonhound up there because she is more demanding than all five of you ever could be. So with that, my staff and I are here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. So on, it's like slide 13, it's under financial sustainability. You talk about diversifying revenue as much as possible, and indicate that property tax receipts account for 64% of the general fund. Do you know what percentage, you may not have this at your fingertips, but what percentage of that is actually would be the homesteaded valuation? Percentage of our general fund. What I'm getting to, of course, is if those were eliminated, what number are we looking at?
Angie's over there laughing inside because we were just having this conversation this morning that we need to get written confirmation of that number from the property appraiser's office. I've seen 50 to low 60% for our city. Until we have something in writing from the property appraiser, I don't want to commit us to it, but it's somewhere between 50 to 65%. If we lose that, it's catastrophic for us.
Here's as much.
You talking about the percentage of the budget or the percentage of residents that are homesteaded?
Well, then my question is about percentage of yeah, what the percentage that accounts for the general fund when you just only consider homesteaded properties as opposed to commercial and non-homesteaded properties. I mean, I really don't have a lot of questions per se, not for anybody here anyway, or state legislators. Yeah, I do. I have a lot of questions, but I find it just baffled by all this at this point and how it could be moving forward the way it is, but it is, and we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen in November. It's going to take 60% of the vote to pass. Don't know if it will. My gut tells me that it is going to, unfortunately. And what's more disturbing than the plan itself is the lack of a plan for any sort of revenue replenishment. It's astounding to me that there's nothing. There's no indicators of, is it, I think that's the plan, is let it happen and let everybody flounder and try to figure it out. And then the state may step out. But I mean, the fact that they're not addressing the elephant in the room, which is sales tax increase, is mind-boggling to me. I don't understand it. And I've seen some of the stuff that's been published by, I forget her first name, but Mrs. Kuplevich. Very well done. Granted, I'm sure it's not perfect, but pretty well thought out, pretty well put together. And it's pretty dire. I mean, it is dire. So with that, going into our approach on things, I mean, I think there has to be a plan of action for the potential shortfalls. We should really have a budget that we agree on in a best case scenario where this does not pass, the tax relief does not pass, which is a great day for us if that happens. However, we also have to have a plan B, and I think we need to be able to shift gears quickly once it passes, because my understanding, at least right now, that it would take effect at the beginning. Not like it's something that's going to take 3 years. That is going to happen right away. So, right. So that is very, very, very problematic. I think that we are likely to have probably several more workshop type meetings to discuss, to prioritize, specifically prioritize, I mean, virtually everything, and separate it out into these are the musts. You know, we have to pay our employees, we have to pay for benefits, and these, all these expenses that are a given. And then let's see what's left. And then I think we have to probably make some hard decisions. You touched on the fleet management, the size of the fleet. Those types of things are really hard decisions. And then there's personnel, there's pay increases, there's everything. Sorry, Kristen, there's park projects, there's things, just everything is on the table, I think, and we have to consider that. But I think we have to have a plan, what if plan nailed down. I think this discussion here is great for, perhaps we talk about this as though it's not going to get approved, but subsequent to this, I think we really have to have a plan moving forward that identifies whatever those harsh cuts are going to have to be. And I don't think we make it even then. With cutting out some of the more obvious things, I think we're short. But I think that's the approach that we need to take. With that being said, going into priorities that I see, I think it's very similar to last year. I don't think it changes a whole lot. I think it's the Indian River Lagoon health, which includes the muck removal project and all that. Love to see that get done, of course. Preservation of home rule, what little we seem to have left, and that'll be an ongoing effort, I think. And then, of course, preservation of homestead property tax. And I get this isn't really our thing per se, but if this were to fail, if that vote fails in November, I would love to see a legislator that would be willing to sponsor a bill that would protect homestead property tax, but also include, or any bills that are filed must have a specific state revenue replacement component to it. Can't come in and just say, we're going to cut this out without any plan whatsoever. Even if that plan says the burden will be shifted onto local governments, they're not even indicating that yet, for sure. So, but sidewalks are always going to be a priority for me. Connectivity within the community, I think it's very important. I think we're seeing the fruits of that labor happening on Osceola Drive, and I think I have yet to hear any negative comments on that. I think it looks great. I think it's going to serve a great purpose once Algonquin has gone through its expansion. And I think in other areas of the city as well, little by little, we'll pick away at these things. Again, that's if the property tax does not get annihilated. But yeah, other than that, to me, it's the same. Everything else is the same to me in terms of priorities. With that being said, I'll pass it along to our deputy mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, and just I guess piggyback on what you were speaking on earlier. The alarming thing to me is at what rate they want to implement this bill. I was watching it live as they voted on it, and I think they approved it, and with a 10-year, $100,000 phased increment process. And then the very next day they made an amendment, and then later on made another amendment which said significantly reduce. Mm-hmm. I don't, what that language states, I don't know, with no clear
Pretty
plan.
Subjective.
Yeah, no clear plan on how much or how little. And then also just the words tough conversations kept coming up when they were trying to pass it. And, I just wonder what conversations they had. But I would have to agree, you have to, in these situations, you have to plan for the worst and hope for the best, and still build the budget, but be prepared to eliminate what we need to based off of priority. To me, the number one would be the phase 2 of the fire station annex. Obviously the public safety is near and dear to the heart of myself and the community. The dredging, also the Algonquin Sports Complex. The parks are very, very high on my priority list. So, potential phase 2 completions of Algonquin Sports Complex. And that's pretty much my priorities as well.
Echoing everything that the mayor and Adam just said. I think, we do need to stick with what we have, and keeping the communications manager would be important because we're going to need someone to communicate all if things do change. And I think what you said about having a best case scenario and a worst case makes the most sense. And maybe then that is when we look at, the different trucks or whatnot, maybe they don't have to be replaced in a worst case. But yeah, let's hope for the best and prepare for the worst.
For you.
Mayor Nickel, without being too redundant to the other comments, most of which I believe are very consistent with my feelings on this. But one of the things that I know this is going to be self-evident in the communications that we've had so far is being able to evaluate what that worst case scenario is, and also be able to evaluate what our must-haves versus our nice-to-haves are. I think we have a lot of nice-to-haves currently in our budget, which we would continue to pursue if we get the best case scenario outcome of the legislative decision on property taxes. But at that point, we would need to really come up with good justifications to be able to include them and keep them in our plans if we were to take a significant revenue hit based on what we project could happen. Second comment is the pursuit of grants and other appropriations. We currently have a consultant that does grant writing, correct? Is that, I guess the question is, how is that working out? Has that been very productive? Has that been a good return on that effort? And if so, could that be an area where we expand some effort as an investment in the future to try to increase that diversified revenue model that you mentioned, John?
I believe it's been very successful. They're the ones who pursued the $1 million water quality grant that's going to offset the majority of the cost of the baffle box. And there's some potential grants that we're looking at with them right now. The issue there is you don't really save money if you're applying for a grant for something you're not planning on doing, because you have to have some local match. The tree assessment that we did, ended up costing us $42,000, and we're getting 50% of that back. I believe we got a great value for our $22,000, but we did spend $22,000.
Okay. I guess just to also, the last comment I have is the prioritization. So in my opinion, I concur with Mayor Nichols' assessment that a top priority would be addressing the Indian River Lagoon issues. But I also believe that part of that mitigation, the long-term mitigation, not the short-term mitigation for dredging the Indian River Lagoon, would be increasing and improving our stormwater projects, because that is generally the considerable source of what causes that problem. So when you look at, you can put a Band-Aid on something, but, reducing the input to the lagoon is going to be what a long-term solution looks like. And so I would be in favor of looking at more stormwater opportunities to help prevent future concerns and issues with much higher cost corrective actions on dredging the lagoon. And that's all I have right now.
Councilmember Nutt.
I agree with everything that the mayor has been saying. Larger cities have a business tax receipt that those large municipalities that have these large business tax receipts are going to be able to survive this with very minimal or not as deep of a budget cut that we're going to take. And everything that I've seen that's coming out of this legislation, these committees, there's nothing that's been said about accommodating small residential business, residential municipalities like us. So, but it's my understanding that even with even cutting a third of every single department's budget, still won't be able to meet ends meet. The mayor said it's catastrophic. It is catastrophic. So everything's on the table. So legislation needs to, just like Mayor said, anything that needs to be said right now needs to be said with legislators. Because nobody's listening. And I don't understand why they're waiting for us to fail and then throwing us a life, saver afterwards. It just doesn't make sense. But that's all I got to say. I'm just disappointed in what's going on right now, and I wish it was different. And because we're already running, as far as I consider, as a tight ship with all our departments. We'll find something if we have to, and we have to tighten our belt. But it's bad. That's all I got.
Yes, it is. So, yeah, and I agree with everyone else's comments as well. I wasn't trying to reduce my list to something less, but I agree with everything that's been said. Obviously, we want to try to preserve what we can and continue our efforts with the lagoon. To Councilmember Yorio's point, yeah, more stormwater projects. That's the key contributor to the problems with the lagoon. We do have our hands tied to a certain degree because we're all built out. There are some lower hanging fruit type of things that we can pursue after we've gone through and done whatever backflow boxes we can do at all the basin bottoms, if you will, or the outfall points. And then we can start working our way up from there, so to speak, up the advanced piping systems and doing exfiltration piping wherever we can and things of that nature. But I agree, that needs to remain a priority, assuming we have the funds to do. So with that, I don't have any questions of staff. I mean, you guys always do a great job. We love what you do. I speak for council, but you guys are doing a fantastic job. And one other thing I do want to say is that I was asking about the grant writing position and that was good return on investment. I think it is. I think it's but I think that competition is just going to skyrocket. We're not the only ones out there, obviously, are going to have problems, and there's others out there that are way worse than us. And everybody's going to be scrambling for grants.
Match, and then most of the time you already have to have engineered plans too, right? So which costs?
Not always, but it's can run parallel a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be, you'll hire a consultant to do whatever plans are necessary. And to John's point, you should never pursue these projects unless you're already planning on doing it without them. And if it just so happens along the way you're able to secure that grant, then if those monies somewhere else to another. No.
Can I ask the deputy mayor if he's has any education that's coming out of the Florida League of Cities that you've learned from anything of what's being done to lobby our legislators on this?
Yeah, so it's essentially the same that we're talking about here. The rough numbers are the Florida League of Cities estimates roughly 115 cities are going to have to either join the county or start consolidating with surrounding cities to make up something that would be able to support it. But the continued thing is to reach out to your state senator, reach out to your state representative, and tell them individually that, you're against this, and also when it comes down to vote, it needs a 60% majority. So we're gonna. I believe the onus is on us. To your point earlier, it's like the small local government is the best form of government, and it's our job as elected officials to fight for you guys, and we will do that. So I guess to that point is it's going to be the onus is going to be on us to educate the public on the second, third, like down the line ramifications of what happens if this does go into effect, because I mean everything, even just to talk about the Indian River Lagoon, there's an interlocal agreement which is a component of the budget, because I'm on the financial subcommittee of the One Lagoon, and there's an interlocal agreement that contributes money, and if the cities are making cuts to fund their services, obviously that's going to get affected as well. So there's many things down the line that I just don't think that is getting looked at or talked about, and that's on us to do.
Question as well. So as part of our FY26 planning, or actually implementation of our budget, is there any, so again, this year, not budgeting for next year, is there any benefit to a strategy that defers any financial commitments to any large projects this year as a way to kind of safe harbor our position going into FY27, or is that already money spent?
The thing I can say is if we would have had that conversation 5 months ago, we could have implemented it. But I'm very proud of the department directors. They've been very proactive this year. The vast majority of our capital projects are either executed or in the solicitation of bids phase. There's not a lot of capital projects to not do at this point. One thing, if I could get some clarification, and this is, I'm not asking for a final answer, but a plan B could have a couple different scenarios. A plan B could go to a equal expenditures with new revenues immediately, or use some of the fund balance to gradually bring your revenue and expenditures in line. And that is going to be something that I think we talk about further down the road, is possibly if we have a catastrophic property tax reform effective January 1, do we agree to use $1 million, $1.5 million to balance the 28 budget, and then bring the 29 budget within $500,000, and with the goal of 30 equaling revenues to expenditures? Or do you just bite the bullet and right-size the ship within the first 6 months? Because we have $12 million, a little more than $12 million in recurring revenues for fiscal year 26. $7.5 million of that is personnel related. So right-sizing the ship in a quick period of time, there's no way of getting around a reduction in staffing. And where if you try to gradually bring it in, it gives you two options. One, that it gives the glimmer of hope that the legislature will realize what they've done to us all and increase the sales tax and do some more revenue sharing to give us some of the money back. I don't think anybody realistically thinks that they would ever make us whole. And B, it allows some of that reduction in staff to be done through attrition versus layoffs. That's something possibly in April we talk about.
Yeah, I think that's something that we need to be able to pull the trigger on at a certain point. I see where you're going with that. Yeah, that's something we need to think on, all of us, of course. Because we've fought long and hard to preserve that money that we have. Well, but by the same token, you know, this would sort of clearly rise to the level of an emergency, in my opinion. And if we have to, we have to, but to me, that should be a backstop. We just don't know what this looks like yet. It's kind of part of the problem. We can't decide anything right now anyway. But I think it's going to take coming up with that Plan B budget, if you will, or that list of things that we can write off in terms of expenses, or we can really make that kind of a decision or know where we stand. Our kind of our plan C in terms of, okay, what point, what levels does it have to get before we actually act on that? Good idea. Talk about having to make up revenues. There's also, you know, you got to remember that what we do have left for property taxes, non-homesteaded and commercial properties. Look at property tax increases for those properties. And that's got to be on the table too. It does. To what extent? I don't know. I don't know what that answer is. But I see this being a mixed bag of things that we're going to have to minimize the pain as much as we possibly can. But be some really hard choices potentially. That's the idea of dipping into the reserves is got to be on the table as well.
I think in sometime in the future, we can use Harbor Highlights, or maybe it's not appropriate for that, but maybe on Facebook just to let residents know what is going on and could be or couldn't be, so it's not a total surprise when it happens, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are not aware of this at all.
The challenge we have is once there's ballot language, assuming each house passed 75%, it goes straight to the ballot and the governor's not involved. We are prohibited from advocating how to vote. So we have to be very clear on this is information and not appear to be slanting it one way or the other. Yeah, we can use a lot of different ways of doing that, short posts on Facebook, more longer discussions, beachside chat type videos. I'm not sure how many people want to read financial articles that go a couple pages in Harbor Highlights. So
She's right.
Yeah.
We need to head it off in the past. We need to do this now before November, obviously.
It's, John and I had a conversation yesterday about this. Tossed around the idea of potentially having town hall-ish type of meeting specifically about this issue. But he's right. We have to be super careful. We can't, and once that ballot language is out, I can't sit there and go, this is terrible, this is devastating. I can't convey that message anymore. I have to say, these are the numbers that we're looking at. This is what we project that will happen to our city budget. If this is successful, then this is what happens if it's both sides of it. And like you said, we can't suggest that people don't vote for it. So it's a bit challenging because that ballot language is Not too far off, I'm sure. I would imagine we're going to start seeing that this summer. That's going to start coming out and start formulating about that. Don't have a lot of time without knowing what we're looking at. It's just incredibly difficult to figure out exactly what to do and what to present.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing we have to be careful about. We would be presenting speculation to a certain point.
I think that the challenge is there's so much uncertainty. But, you know, as we do our meetings and as we do our events, you know, and out in the public, you know, it's a great opportunity for us to talk to the residents and kind of let them know the things that we see in these meetings and at the higher level. And once it comes down to that, as we get closer to the ballot language, then we could have some more informed decisions, because that's going to generate a lot of questions. And like you said earlier, Mayor, we don't know until we find out.
So obviously time is of the essence given that discussion. I know Mayor Nickel mentioned the analysis that Melissa Kaplevitz put together, very well written, looked very well thought out, and I think that would be that could be a component if vetted by our staff to make sure that it's accurate. That could be part of that messaging early on, while we can still convey to the public these are the impacts of what this tax or property tax reduction could look like for our citizens.
Again, to the mayor's point, that we don't know yet what the extent of the impacts are until then. We can't speculate and tell that to the residents and how to vote on that. So it is kind of a tightrope we're going to have to walk there. I do want to know one thing, is that are we capped at our business tax receipts on what we can charge? I mean, get out of that, because I know a lot of our home rules being taken away from us.
Those might go away, though.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Too.
Yeah.
They're talking about eliminating business tax as well currently.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I thought.
You know what's our total in terms of what we collect now? Total that is, or
Tax receipts is around 6,000.
so it's a negligible.
One area, though it's not within our total control, is go to who we have franchise agreements with and renegotiate that pass-through. FP&L, if they were willing, if you go from a 10% to a 25%, that'll bring in a chunk of change, but it's also going to increase everybody's electric
That's
bill.
right.
Increase your food bill, because Publix's electric bill will go up. And
Yeah, and that's the challenge, is ultimately it's just going to get passed down to the residents. It's not, we're just shifting things around, and honestly, overall, that's actually a big part of the message that should be conveyed to the public, is that you're not going to save the amount of money you think you're going to save. Just not. If your taxes or whatever it might be, I don't know what any Harbor Beach taxes are for the average home, but say, whatever, say it's, I don't know, $3,000 a year, whatever that number is. You're not saving $3,000 a year. Ultimately, you may only save a few $100s. Right down to it, because between the offsets that we have to do, the additional fees or taxing or whatever that might go on, you're going to pay it somewhere at some point, some of it at least anyway. Oh yeah, and I mean that's it's kind of an intangible thing until it happens, and then they see the results of that, and it becomes really painful for people. And of course, who are they going to complain to? All of us. Why is the park not maintained as well as it was? This many less staff members to be able to do it. Or we don't have enough trucks, and this one's in the shop and that one's in the shop. There's so many different things that this will cause, but it won't surface for a year or two or three later. You won't see this right away.
Yeah, and like, just to your point, it's the level of service is going to go down.
Absolutely.
And that's what we need to, echo.
Yeah, and then, if they go, obviously this was somewhat controversial when it came about before, but you got our beach parking that we're charging for, and that's under the microscope now, to even be able to do that. That's another cost. That's another cost add for us. We had that to offset our expenses, for the parks, and that may go away. So, yeah, it's coming at us from several different angles all at one time. Pressing meeting. Yeah, and if you look at Melissa Kaplevich's or article, I mean, they're actually would be in the negative. There's apparently no way for them to get in the positive side of the column. And, he communicated somewhat with Mayor McDermott about it. And yeah, his hands are tied. There's only so much you can do. And so it's a wait and see, but at the same time, I think we have to be proactive with a plan B. We have to know what that is and just, again, to me, it's all about those priorities, and maybe it comes in chunks where we say, okay, if it's this bad, we cut this and this. If it's this bad, we have to cut this, and this. Get to a point where we agree upon those priorities. I think it makes their job and our job a whole lot easier. Not easy decisions, mind you, but it makes it easier from the standpoint of ready to implement something right away. And one other thing I was thinking was, does it make sense for the upcoming year's budget, do we basically freeze projects for the first quarter? And we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. Freeze them, we can unpause them the following year if we can, or some of that money.
Earlier was to, look at that and say, what can we defer or hold so that we can, not commit money. We can always turn it back on later if the environment allows us to do so, but it allows us to preserve some capital moving forward.
I go back, let me go to the list of the projects. The only one that you really probably, the muck project, it's going to happen when it happens if we do it. The fire station annex is probably going to be in the bidding process in the first quarter of FY26. But everything else is things that can be, in the queue. If it doesn't get 60%, we execute. If it does get 60%, we reevaluate or go to plan Bs.
Said the fire station annex was FY26.
Did it? It says 3 years. The first year was only 95,000.
And that's this year, FY26.
26 has $1 million in it, so we have half the money. If we don't get a state appropriations, it would take us 1.25 million of our own money to complete. If we get the full state appropriation at 875,000, at $500,000 in government counting numbers. That was a joke, Angie. She likes the details. I like the round stuff. But those are the only two projects that you really probably don't want to just put a pause on.
Okay. All right, everybody. Okay. All right, next is public forum. If anybody from the audience would like to come up and speak, microphone and state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. Nothing but head shakes going on there. All right, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by the deputy mayor, second by Councilmember Nutt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned.